Hi everyone, welcome to another exciting edition of Words, Images, and Worlds. On this episode, I am delighted, honored to be talking with someone who's been creating in comics for quite some time. The word legend comes to mind. Legendary book collection, for sure. Glad to be talking with comics creator Gary Carlson. Gary, thank you for joining.
Oh, thank you.
A pleasure, a pleasure. I will mention a couple of titles and creations of yours, and then we can get down to a few questions. So, Big Bang Comics, Supreme, Aquaman, Nova, TMNT, and you're the co-creator of a character called Vanguard that has been part of the world of comics. And I believe you've worked with Eric Larson on some Savage Dragon material as well.
Yeah, mostly backups in there,
Yeah,
featuring some of the characters like Vanguard and some of the other characters and his Mighty Man.
yeah.
We've done some backups there and whatever, but yeah, I mean, I know some of that stuff I only worked on. I had no part in the creation or whatever of Supreme or
Hmm,
any
hmm.
of that kind of stuff. But yes, I did work on them and it was fun.
You were a guiding force.
Well, a couple of issues worth, yes.
Yeah. Well, curious about how you knew comics, writing, creating was the space you wanted to be in.
It just I started reading them at a very young age. I probably kindergarten or first grade. My older brother read comics and his friends read comics, and I hung around them and I started reading comics too, and I fell in love. So there was no
Nice.
way no way out of it. I've got pictures from first grade of the Flash and Superman and stuff because I'm talking 1962, 63, and
Hmm.
for the most part, it was all DC stuff that I was seeing and buying. So
Yeah.
that's pretty much what I grew up on for the first couple of years anyway.
Yeah, yeah. I was also a DC kid, although this would have been the 80s for me.
Hmm.
And you talking about that just makes me think of pictures that still exist of me in like makeshift homemade Flash costumes and things like that before people were really manufacturing them, at least as I was growing up. So I think we have
Yeah,
a common root there.
I've got a picture of myself in a Superman costume from probably 62 or 63. It was, a Halloween costume,
Yeah,
but it
yeah,
was pretty nice. It wasn't the cheap plastic like they've gone to now. So,
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Well, of course, I mentioned Eric Larson there. Any particular collaborations, experiences, titles that you've worked on that stand out as some of the best in your career so far?
I don't know about the best. I've got my favorites.
Hmm.
I was still am very proud of the Megaton run in the 80s. What I started off on, there was 8 issues there and a couple of other issues. We printed Wild Man and Rubber Roy and Ram.
Hmm.
And then there was the Megaton Explosion, which was a promo who's who kind of a book. I mean, very proud of all those just to get it was only 8 issues over 5 years or 6 years or something, but very proud to get all them out. Yeah, very proud of most of the stuff in there. I mean, a lot of it's because of the people I worked with, and they were, I just considered them friends. I mean, we'd talk and a lot of back and forth stuff. I mean, there was some of it I was just, oh, send me the plot, the
Hmm.
script,
Hmm.
and that was it. But there was a lot of them. I mean, I was in contact with Eric quite a bit working on stuff, and later on with Rob Liefeld and some of the other people. I mean, a lot of those people are still good friends with me. I mean, I tend to leave the guys that have been busy all these years alone without bothering them. But yeah, that's me. It was fun working with the people. I mean, as far as I was concerned, they were all pretty much friends of mine. I mean, generally, a lot of them came over to my house once or twice, and or I went there. At least the people that lived, I was in the Chicago suburbs then, and Angel Medina didn't live too far away, and
Hmm.
Frank Fosco was about 45 minutes away, and I mean, Chris Ecker and Ed DeGeorge were both in town, so I mean, it's easy to be friends that way. So
Yeah,
hope that answers your question. But I mean,
absolutely.
it's all been fun. I mean, it's all been a blast. I mean, being able to work with some legendary creators on at least the Big Bang stuff has been, it was a real treat, you know. I mean,
Hmm.
we had one
Hmm.
cover by Kurt Swan and Murphy Anderson, another cover
Yeah.
by Alex Ross, and just a lot of guys. I mean, Dave Cockrum, one of my favorites. I mean, he did a cover, so many guys. You know, I mean, that was just a matter of, working with them probably wasn't any more than a half hour altogether. But I mean, it'd take a week or two or however long for the stuff to get done, and it was just fun to be working with guys like that. So
Yeah.
uh, there you go.
But you got to be on sort of the ground floor, the starting days with some of those guys that have become very, very big names. So I imagine that that carries a sense of reward as well.
Yes, that does. I mean, it makes me proud, but I don't know how much of it has a lot to do with me. I looked for the guys whose work I liked. I was trying to create Megaton was a book, kind of an anthology book, but it had 8 different characters and stories in it. And my plan in the back of my mind was if it ever caught on, it could split it off into 8 separate books. They were all 8 separate series basically,
Hmm.
and it was fun. I mean, just working at that and keeping it going. Um, very very fun. But like I said, I mean, the first issue I was looking for guys to draw,
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
was going to local conventions in Chicago, and I mean there was Mike Gustovich was there. I think I saw him at 2 shows, and nobody was hiring. I
Yeah.
mean, I liked the work he was doing at Power Comics, and not sure if the other stuff had started coming out yet. But I mean, big fan. I loved his stuff. I thought you ought to be working. I thought if guys like you can't get work from the pros, I can maybe start my own company. And that's how I came about. I was just looking for guys that I thought their work looked professional, and went from there.
Nice.
After the
Nice.
first issue or two, people were contacting me, and it was just a matter of like, no, I like your stuff. That's good. So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, great to give space to creators and to treat creators well and to create that kind of a place. And I just use the word create way too many times,
yes,
but
yeah,
that's generally what I'm going for.
I gotcha. And
Yeah.
I mean, back then I was working a regular job, and I was paying the guys. I mean, on the Megaton, as far as I know, through the whole thing, it wasn't a lot. It was like $20 a page for pencils, $20 a page for inks,
Hmm.
and however much, probably $5 for lettering. And I did the colors on the cover myself. Couldn't afford to do the whole book in color just because of the printing and the costs of that. But yeah, just a ton of fun. I mean, a little bit strenuous and whatever,
Yeah.
putting the issues together got harder. People would do an issue or two, and then they were, hey, Marvel hired me. I'm going, to AC Comics and whatever. So I was like, well, I got you. You got to go and where the money is, and then find another guy and just keep chugging away. And it pretty much worked. I mean, but that was, yeah, why there was only 8 issues. I mean, the first 2 or 3 or however many issues were 64 pagers, and that's a lot to put together and a lot
Hmm.
to get out of people. I mean, and a lot of guys that weren't real professional about cranking the stuff out and getting it done, and you'd
Yeah.
call to check on somebody and they're like, oh, he's out roller skating or he's out. It's like, okay, let him know I'm just checking to see where he's at on the story. So
Yeah.
that was that was how that worked. Yeah. It was fun, but
Right. But work, right? And all the
yep.
things. Well, curious by means of a final question, what has your attention these days? Any authors, artists that you're currently looking at, any work that you're engaged with or otherwise creating, and also where folks can connect with you if they want to see some of what you've worked on, some of what you're working on, and get in touch.
Yeah, well, I'm pretty much I'm on Facebook under my own name. I mean, they can check me out at bigbangcomics.com. There's
Mhm,
also
mhm,
megatoncomics.com that doesn't get updated very often, but it's got a fair amount of pictures and information on it that's at least fun and some information, you know.
mhm,
And then
mhm.
as far as these days, I don't do a lot of reading of comics. I mean, they've kind of lost me over time. I buy anything Eric Larson does.
Mhm, mhm.
And I mean, a lot of the guys that I have worked with in the past, if I know they're doing something, I will go out of my way to get that. But I mean, all these years later, 60 odd years later, I'm still basically I'll take my chance with the Titans, Teen Titans, or the Legion of Superheroes, you know, and
Mhm,
that's
mhm.
those are on my pull list at the store, and generally they don't let me down to where I like, okay, take these off, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, off and on, it's the Shazam stuff,
Mhm,
which I've
mhm.
loved since whenever. So,
Awesome, awesome. Well, I'm an Eric Larson fan as well, so
yeah,
uh,
you and me both. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, that's it. I mean, everyone's, oh, how did you find him and hire him? And it's like, well, I really didn't. I was familiar with his stuff, and I thought this guy is so good. I mean, writing and drawing and everything that
Yeah.
he's gonna be hired by Marvel and DC tomorrow, you know. So I
Mhm.
didn't even approach him, and one of the other artists was working on a story and couldn't do it, and told me I sent it on to Eric Larson to see if he wanted to do it, and he said yes, and I was like, oh God, I'm like that story's not good enough for him. So then came up with the concept on Vanguard and worked with him to get the characters designed and what the first story was and all. So again, like I said, I mean, as far as finding the artists, it's like, yeah, it they were there, you know, they were there, they
Mhm.
were looking to be found, and I was just the guy that was lucky enough to find them.
Well, I think everybody that reads comics, I speak for at least a good number of people, and send gratitude for that. And glad you did. Glad you found them,
Me
and
too.
had that space for them to work in and explore from. So, Gary, thank you so much for the time. Thank you
You
for the
betcha.
creating, and glad to have you back anytime.
All righty. Well, thank you so much.
All
It's
right.
fun.
All right. Thank you.
All right.